Okay, I'm off work for the day, so let's take a look at some thought-provoking things from Truth and Transparency's live earlier today. Shall we?
I don't want to come out and just say something that I don't know. I'm going to try to lean on people that I believe that I can obtain. Information is power, knowledge is power, and it's just really kind of surprising that more people in this community aren't going over and taking an opportunity to learn and educate ourselves on processes and protocols and um, our rights and balancing those rights with as far as like victims' rights versus like you're innocent until proven guilty. We can't just go be violating and just getting search warrants signed. Like there's ways to do things, and so it kind of just baffles me that people aren't over there watching the shit that they're putting out.
I agree, 100%. Knowledge is power. And that's why when I discuss a subject, I make sure that I understand it thoroughly and have a good grasp before I discuss it. And I am blessed in that I have a couple lawyers in my family. I have 5 doctors in my family. I have several registered nurses in my family, a couple civil engineers. So I'm able to pick the brains of a lot of very educated people to learn about several different professions, including picking the brains of my own coworkers and bosses. So I don't just have my experiences, but I've learned from others. So I do agree. But keep that in mind as we go forward with some more of her thoughts from her live today.
All those warrants and nothing comes back to Brian. Think about that. Every single one of them. Every single one of them. The return, 0.
Except none of us know that. Those warrants are all sealed. We don't know what came back on the returns. So none of us can say that 0 came back matching Kohberger or that any came back matching Kohberger. We'll have to wait until the gag is either lifted or until trial. Now, let's continue.
I want to know how they're going to get away with this. Okay. When you're filling out your warrant or your search warrant and you have your probable cause, you have Blaker saying that they believe that Brian went straight home. Okay. And he maps out the way that he went straight.
No, that would be incorrect. We'll discuss in a minute.
He didn't take that big loop-de-loop. Okay. And that we believe that there's going to be evidence at that house because he went straight home.
No, that's not why he said he thought there would be evidence in the house. Again, we'll discuss.
Right. And then you have Payne writing the probable cause and him saying, we need to get his records for this phone and his historical data and his tolls and his whatever. Okay. They're going after everything, right? Because we were able to get his number because he gave it in a ticket, and then we have reason to believe that he made this loop because we have surveillance cameras of a white sedan coming on a camera at 5:30 in the morning. What? Think about what they used and how I said he went ahead and did this so that I could get this signed. And we're going into his apartment but it's totally different than what you're saying he did when you're going after what? The phones, the historical data.
You don't know what was said to get the phone warrants because that's sealed. So if you're talking about the affidavit, when he talked about the big looping route, that was the probable cause affidavit for the arrest, not to get the phone warrants. In fact, they had the phone warrants, and that's how they determined that loop they claim he made. or that's one possible route he could have made. They believe that's what the cast data shows. They had the AT&T information to determine that. But let's continue.
How can that be possible? How could that be legal? So I can say, you guys know what I'm talking about, right? Hey, you're going to go ask this judge. I wonder were this the same judges that signed those? I'm going to go ask. I'm going to tell the judge that we need his phone records because these cameras show a white car left out of Pullman at 2:45 and a white car came back at 5:25 and it was from that area, okay, which is consistent with Brian Kohberger what? Making a loop all the way around because we have what? We were able to get his phone doing what? Allegedly pinging, okay, and using CAS to show this like weird ass map of going that loop. Well, then, if you're saying that, was there a point in time that you said, no, we don't have reason to believe that he did this, but we're still going to go ahead and write this other probable cause affidavit up? So, because I believe this other cop believes that he went straight home, and that's what would make it. You guys know what I'm talking about, right? I would think both of those motherfucking things have to be tossed.
I'm not sure if her listeners know what she's saying because she doesn't really even know what she's saying. She finally started coming around to the fact that they must have had the cast to say the pings were making that loop. But yet then she's still confusing the probable cause affidavits that contain the information about that loop. Again, we don't know what was written in the warrant to get the AT&T records, but we do know what was written in the arrest affidavit and the search warrant for the apartment and office. So, and she said, did they go to a different judge? Yeah, different jurisdictions, different states.
It's like, so at trial, they're not going to be able to say, Officer Payne, Detective Payne, you served a search warrant for Brian Kohberger because you thought he went which way? Up out of King. And then were you aware that Blaker disagreed with you and said that he went the other way, straight back to Pullman, and that you had video evidence of that he couldn't have went straight back? Did that video evidence exist? So you knew that that couldn't have been it? You're not communicating with him? And he's thinking, well, I mean, did you guys talk about that?
Well, considering that their affidavits have almost the exact same wording in several parts, I'd say that they talked. But we'll discuss in a few minutes.
An investigation, once you've talked about that? So then you knew, okay, hey, you're going to just write that up that way. Go with what you think, and I'll go with what I think. And then we're both going to go, it's contradicting of the other. And then we put them in and we're getting search warrants signed, but yet they're claiming two different things. I would just think common sense wise that would be a problem for me. Like if I'm a judge and I'm looking at this and I'm like, wait a second, your fucking buddy just came in here and he's saying that the car is going that way and you have this evidence. So you're saying he went straight home, making it so that he would have never discarded anything. Who's the judge that signed it? Did they use different judges?
Yep.
If they use different judges to sign, like if Blaker got his signed by a different judge, I can go look at the forms I have. Where are they? I don't have them out. I want to go digging. If I was remembering correctly, so like Don Daniels had to talk to Blaker, fill her in on all this stuff. Then Don Daniels is the one that went to the judge to sign to sign that. Because she's like, after being told about this, and this, I believe that probable cause does exist for X, Y, and Z. Right now, Don Daniels is going to get on the stand and be asked, "Well, Don Daniels, were you aware?" Okay, in this suppression hearing, Don Daniels, were you aware that? Did you ever talk to Detective Payne? No, I only talked to Detective Blaker. Okay, and Blaker never informed you that they had served a different warrant at the same time, stating that they had cameras showing that Brian Kohberger's vehicle took a completely different route and didn't go straight home. No, I never knew that.
Okay, let's stop there. Blaker and Payne don't have any contradictions in their warrants or their affidavits. Payne's arrest warrant doesn't go into quite as much detail about technical things as Blaker's does, because Payne's was just for the arrest. Blaker's was to get the warrant for the office and the apartment, so he discussed more in depth what he thought he would find in those locations. So he went more in depth into what he thought he might find on Kohberger's electronics, computers, phones if they were there, talked about how he believed the knife may be there, but nowhere in Blaker's affidavit does it say he believed 100% that Kohberger went straight home. And in fact, both Payne and Blaker say that one route could have been going straight back to Pullman. So, let's take a look at Blaker's affidavit first. Okay, so this is from page 7 of Blaker's affidavit. It says, suspect's vehicle 1 is next seen departing the area of the King Road residence at approximately 4:20 a.m. at a high rate of speed. Suspect vehicle 1 is next observed traveling northbound on Walenta Drive. Based on my knowledge of the area and review of camera footage in the neighborhood that does not show suspect vehicle 1 during that time frame, I believe suspect vehicle 1 likely exited the neighborhood at Palouse River Drive and Conestoga Drive. Palouse River Drive is at the southern edge of Moscow and proceeds into Whitman County, Washington. Eventually, the road leads to Pullman. Pullman, Washington is approximately 10 miles from Moscow. Both Pullman and Moscow are small college towns, and people commonly travel back and forth. Okay, he does not say anything on there about him heading straight back home. He says he believes he likely exited the neighborhood. But see, Palouse River Drive and Conestoga Drive can also take you down 95. Now, let's go to page 8. Page 8 of Blaker's affidavit. At approximately 5:25 a.m., a white sedan, which was consistent with the description of suspect vehicle 1, was observed on 5 cameras in Pullman, Washington, and on the WSU campus cameras. The first camera that recorded the white sedan was located at 1300 Johnson Road in Pullman. The white sedan was observed traveling northbound on Johnson Road. I'm sorry, I thought Lana said that he didn't say anything about the car being seen on cameras coming back from that loop. That Blaker said he went straight home. That's interesting. Also interesting because on page 9, he goes on to discuss him on Stadium Way as well. And then this little map of the White Elantras path coming back from Johnson Road and up through Stadium Way. Wonder where I've seen that before. Oh, yeah, I believe it's on Payne's affidavit also. Okay, on page 16 of Blaker's affidavit, he draws the map, the big loop, and says below is a description not to scale of the possible route taken based off cellular site locations. Investigators found that the phone did not connect, yada, yada, yada. Based on my training experience and the facts of the investigation thus far, I believe that Kohberger, the user of the 8458 phone, was likely the driver of the white Elantra that observed departing Pullman, Washington, and that this vehicle is likely suspect vehicle 1. Additionally, the route of travel of the 8458 phone during the early morning hours of November 13th, 2022, and the lack of the 8458 phone reporting to AT&T between 2:47 a.m. and 4:48 a.m. is consistent with Kohberger attempting to conceal his location during the quadruple homicide that occurred at the King Road residence. But wait, I thought you said Blaker said he went straight home. That his affidavit was contradictory to Payne. How is this? How am I reading this in the Blaker affidavit then? Oh my goodness. Now, you had said that his rationale for why they needed to search the apartment was because he headed straight home. But that's actually not what Blaker's rationale was. It says, to date, we have not recovered the weapon used in the homicide, which would indicate that he took it with him from the scene. Based on my training, that weapon will likely contain trace evidence on it, such as blood or skin or hair from the crime scene. One likely location for the weapon or any sheath for the weapon would be his residence. Notice he says likely. He doesn't rule out that he ditched it somewhere else. Then he also says, based on my training and experience, when someone plans an event or action, one likely location for doing so is in their residence or office. One would not want to conduct such planning in public if they are planning a criminal act, and so it is even more likely that planning of a criminal act would be done in one's residence or office. That is his main reason for searching the apartment and the office. Not because he claims he went straight home. No. So I'm not sure why you think he said that Kohberger went straight home and that was the rationale, but that's not what Blaker's saying in this PCA at all. Now, you asked if there was 2 judges. That's interesting, considering that you had just lectured people on how knowledge is power and that how all of us in the community should understand these things and go ask and understand how processes work, like getting warrants. Well, Brian Kohberger's apartment and office were in Washington. You cannot get a warrant from an Idaho judge to search something in Washington. So Blaker gave his affidavit to Dawn Daniels, and she went and got the search warrant from Judge Leiby in Whitman County, down in Colfax, Washington. So yes, there were 2 judges. Megan Marshall in Idaho for Payne's affidavit, and Leiby in Washington for Blaker's and Dawn Daniels' search warrant. Okay, so I think you can see that Blaker's affidavit did not contradict Payne's. But let's go further and compare some of the things that are basically exact the same. They're the same. So here we go. Okay, this is the part about the cell pings showing the big loop. They are almost word for word identical. Only a few things that they worded it are differently. But it's almost exactly the same. Blaker's is on the left and Payne's is on the right. And I didn't include Blaker's last line that's over on the next page of his affidavit because I read it earlier in this video. Okay, again, Blaker's is on the left, Payne's is on the right, and this is where they discuss that it could have exited at Palouse River Drive in Conestoga. And notice they both say likely. They believe it likely exited. But neither one of them say definitively. And again, wording is almost exactly the same between the 2 affidavits. And Payne's got cut off because it goes on to the next page, but I didn't post that because you could, if you want me to, I can, but you can go look it up on his affidavit. But it finishes the same way that Blaker's finishes. And then this last comparison is when they were talking about the car being seen on camera coming back into Pullman on Johnson Road and going onto the campus. And Blaker's is on the left, Payne's is on the right. Again, basically the exact same wording and the same map. Okay, so it's safe to say there are no contradictions in the two affidavits. Both Payne and Blaker included the possible travel routes for the car. Neither one definitively said that he went straight back to Pullman, and neither said that he took that long route. And both of them included that same information in their affidavits. So neither one of them left out any of that information. So I don't see any reason why these would be thrown out. There's nothing contradictory. There's nothing that one judge didn't hear over the other. I mean, other than in Blaker's, again, he went into more detail about what he thinks he might find on electronics. But Payne didn't have to say that because Payne's was for the arrest, not for the search warrant. Now, one other thing that kind of surprised me again today was this.
And then you don't hear the family saying, why do we have a guy that has 2 years experience as leading this investigation?
Okay, I don't understand how almost 2 years later, content creators are still getting wrong how many years of service Payne had. He was hired in 2018. At the time of the murders, he had 4 years with Moscow PD, not 2. The Daily Mail didn't fact check and put that he was hired in 2020. And for some reason, so many of you are still repeating that. And it's not true. He was hired in 2018. And he even testified on the stand during the motion to compel hearing. So it amazes me that people are still saying he only had 2 years of experience. So I just find it interesting in light of your little lecture that you gave people about knowledge and about how people in the true crime community really need to learn about these things and to be mindful of what they're putting out. Just seems a little bit hypocritical, in my opinion. But anyways, just wanted to clear those things up. And as always, if there's anything you would like me to cover, let me know.